I found a post on Instagram recently that talked about some of the major benefits of listening to music. And I know I've made a lot of these videos before, so to be honest, I wasn't expecting anything new and I wasn't expecting to do anything with the information. So looking through the post, I was, as I expected, not seeing anything new. I saw music makes you less stressed. Okay, I knew that. Music can help you sleep. Kind of makes sense. Music improves your mood, obviously. Music can reduce dementia risk. Okay, kind of interesting, but also not too surprising, considering it can improve mood and sleep. So these are all interesting, but they're kind of obvious, and you wouldn't really look twice at any of these. We all know music makes people feel good. We all know excessive indulgence, as with anything, can make people feel not good. But then, as I was scrolling through, there was one sentence that did catch my eye. And it said that music can strengthen your immune system by increasing antibody production. Now, this one actually did catch my attention because it makes no sense. How could listening to something in your ear possibly make your body produce a bunch of antibodies? Like, there's no logical connection there. How does one thing translate to the other? So, of course, I knew I'd have to research this. First of all, to find out if it's even true, because realistically, it makes no sense. How could music increase antibody production? But secondly, because I want to know how it works if it is true. And so, diving into the research, I found this major literature review that listed all of the studies that talked about the effects of music on immune function. I was honestly surprised that I was finding this so easily. And I'll go through all of those studies that they describe right now. So let's start. The first study is Bittman et al. They found that group drumming sessions, which is used as rituals in many cultures, as we know, increases natural killer cell activity and increases lymphokine activated killer cell activity without alteration in plasma interleukin 2 or interferon gamma. So, stop. What does all that mean? Let's go piece by piece. Natural killer cells are immune cells of the innate immune system. So, in other words, they go around killing things without the use of antibodies. They just naturally kill things. They're constantly roaming around, and then they serve as the first line of defense against foreign threats in your body. Lymphokine activated killer cells are just a phenotype of cells that include natural killer cells, as well as some killer T cells, if you've heard of those before. So, there's just a bunch of killer cells. These are cells that defend your body, and they're increasing. But the interesting part is actually the next statement. There's no increase in interleukin 2 or interferon gamma. What these are very common and critical cytokines. In other words, these are what's needed to initiate the spawning of the many killer cells. You need these cytokines to even get an immune response like the one they observed. Normally, these cytokines are what signal you to get fever symptoms and whatnot. So normally when you see an increase in killer cells, you'd expect an increase in cytokines and fever symptoms, but that's completely missing here. So what this means, in all, is somehow the subjects are getting a boost in their immune system without the need for an inflammatory response. They're basically getting a free immune boost without a fever or anything. It's a silent boost. This is very interesting because you wouldn't think that music, of all things, would cause this type of boost. Yet killer cells are increasing, and it's as if they don't have to pay anything for that increase. Since I only have access to the abstract of the study, I can only see a brief conclusion statement, but from the sound of it, it seems like the investigators have no idea why this happens. All we can say is it's complicated and we don't really understand it, which I expected to hear that. The second study decided to test something similar. Did recreational music making influence immune response? Okay, so they tested 27 older folks and 27 younger folks and found the following. In the older group, we found significant increases in the number of lymphocytes, T cells, CD4 expressing T cells, memory T cells, and production of interferon gamma and interleukin 6. In the younger group, modulation was non-significant. Worthy of note was the specific immunological changes in the direction opposite to that expected with chronic stress in the older group. The increase in Th1 cytokine IFN gamma and unchanged Th2 cytokine IL4 and IL10 levels in the older group suggests a shift to Th1 dominant status, a shift opposite to that expected with stress. Okay, so they found an increase in T cells first and foremost. T cells are a major white blood cell that indicates immune functioning, and an increase is a good thing. CD4 expressing T cells are what's known as helper T cells. You may remember this from biology class. They trigger the rest of the immune system to get up and get moving. Memory T cells are what allow your immune system to remember past antigens. This is why you can't catch the same cold twice. And production of interferons and interleukins also suggests a more true immune response, which could be due to the physical stress of making music. But what is this part about Th1 and Th2 status talking about? So to put it simply, the normal state of immune response to chronic stress is to shut down the immune system because you want to prioritize your energy for escaping the stress. But here in the older folks, the immune system boosted itself in chronic stress. Now, this may seem like a good thing because you're getting away from the stress somehow and you're also getting an immune boost, but since it came with an actual inflammatory response, which are, fever-like symptoms, maybe not that significant, but it may not have been healthy for the older folks long term. And since the younger people didn't experience that, the benefits were more clear. But for older people, the music making may actually come with trade-offs. Okay, so the next study was a little more interesting. The way this next study worked was the following. Music therapy combined with anti-tumor drugs, including chemotherapy and Chinese drugs, was given to 162 tumor patients. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not too sure what the chemotherapy drugs are, and I'm not too sure what Chinese drugs are. But regardless, there's a musical component here. And the results were as follows. CD8% was reduced in both groups. In the treated group, CD3, CD4, and the CD4, CD8 ratio were not significantly changed, while in the control group, they lowered, obviously. As for NK cell anti-tumor activity in the treated group before and after the treatment, it was not significantly lowered, while in the control group, the lowering after treatment was significant. So, this study is a little more nuanced. Since we're combining music with drugs now, we do expect an immune change because of the drugs. But if music can prevent that immune change, then that is a good sign that music is causing an immune boost, right? So if the chemotherapy drugs are killing their immune cells, but then the music can prevent that, that's a good thing. And that is what we see. The CD8 expression is down after treatment in both groups that listen to music and those that did not. This is a natural consequence of the chemotherapy drugs and perhaps the Chinese drugs. I don't really know what those are. But what stayed constant in the music therapy group is the levels of CD4 and CD3. CD4 is just a protein expressed in helper T cells, again, the cells that trigger the rest of the immune system. CD3 is expressed on all mature T cells. So these are just both good indications that the immune system is staying intact despite an expected hit taken on it from chemotherapy. Now, this is a good thing. The music is actually preventing some of the damage from chemotherapy. Natural killer cell levels also stayed high, which means music was actually able to maintain the immune system of these people. Yet again, another study describes music having a positive effect on the immune system, and this time it's for those who are truly in need of that boost because chemotherapy can have a lot of harmful consequences. Now, this next study had various components attached to it that tested the effect of music on immune response again. So the first test, I guess, was testing if preoperative patients would have any significant changes in their levels of IgA, which is just a type of antibody, when listening to live music. Unfortunately, there was no significant differences this time, but they admit that this was probably because the people were very different from each other and there just wasn't enough samples to make any conclusions, so sample size is too small. Interestingly, though, the other unit they studied was on HIV/AIDS. Now, this is a group that is severely immunocompromised and could benefit from any immune increase, which may come from music. They found that live music actually made this group express more CD8 cells. These are killer T cells, which are the cells that are responsible for killing antigens once they've been activated effectively by helper T cells. More killer T cells is good, but unfortunately, what HIV/AIDS patients really need are CD4 expressing cells, the helper T cells, because these are what actually get the immune system going, and these are what are most damaged by HIV. Regardless, it's still super interesting how these types of patients can actually get some immune boosts, even if small, just by listening to live music. This kind of shows that the effects of music, again, are just really beyond what we can understand. Okay, 2 more studies to go. The next one is interesting because it actually just contradicts everything we just looked at. They had patients listen to either new age music, a choice of music, or no music before and during surgery. Natural killer cell levels actually decreased in both groups that listened to music, and it actually increased for the group that didn't listen to music. So it's the complete opposite of what we just saw. Now, could the surgeries themselves have been causing this? Yes, perhaps. But the surgeries were all different here, so it's hard to know what kind of effect it was having. This could be why the results seem to contradict previous findings, but still, right now, it's only 1 against 4 other studies that disagree with the results of this one. So overall, it still looks good for music boosting the immune system. Now, the last study simply tested the effects of high uplifting music or low uplifting music on the immune function of Japanese college students. And they also tested the effects of it on other things, but we're going to look at immune function. And this definition of high uplifting and low uplifting was defined by the students themselves, so at least there's some internal consistency here. What they found was a little bit inconsistent, though, unfortunately. They said for the most part, natural killer cell levels were maintained when listening to high uplifting music, with a slight increase, but it was better than silence at increasing these levels. IgA levels decreased in the high uplifting music condition, while increasing in the low uplifting condition. The trends for CD4 cells showed that high uplifting music might be better for recovering immune cells, while low uplifting music did not increase CD4 levels compared to silence. Now, this is all really to say that there is some noticeable improvement in immune function as a result of music playing, but it's not clear and it depends on the music. The way they describe high uplifting music is music that's lively and makes you excited, whereas low uplifting music can get you feeling better and relaxed. I'd imagine most of us can think of songs that fit into those categories, so I won't list examples. But it's clear here that we also can't make a general statement that all music increases immune function because clearly it depends on the type. So, what's the takeaway? Looking at all these studies, it's clear that music's effect on the immune system is nuanced. Group music therapy seems to actually be very beneficial. So perhaps playing music with a group of friends, group of people that you know, maybe you're in a band, it can be beneficial to your immune system, which is incredible news, right? Passive listening seems to be somewhat effective, but it depends on what music is being listened to. Now, overall, like much of the research on music, it's promising but nuanced and incomplete. And again, the biggest issue with this type of research is that there's no logical connection yet between music and the body's chemical well being. It seems like the boost of the immune system could be caused by hormones, yet some studies suggest that the immune response caused the hormone release and not the other way around. What we do know is that humans' ability to make and listen to music the way we do is special, and it is certainly complicated. Music has complex effects, and that's why it's important to always be thinking about those effects, even if you have to operate on personal anecdotal evidence. Now, I hope you all enjoyed this literature review, and as always, stay mindful, and I'll see you all in the next episode.